Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. It is October the 4th, year 2023. Welcome to Facebook Live on the Know Thyself Revolution Facebook group. We have this every once in 2 weeks, and let me switch over to our panel today. I don't see the other members of the panel, but I see April, who is a psychic. You've done mediumship and quite a few modalities of healing. Nobody needs an introduction for April. She's been on the panel like 2 years or more. So welcome, April. Good evening. And we have Patricia here. Good evening, Patricia, part of our core group of meditators. And Sri Lakshmi has joined to listen to us. I'm going to put you on mute, Sri Lakshmi, so that we don't have interference. So the question today, April, so it so happened, like, I don't know why the past 2-3 weeks, people have come to me with, oh, I did this, like maybe I went cook lunch or dinner for my child who is going to college, and I dropped it off. And I've been, and then I mean, they had a whole day of work, right? Like after a whole day of work, somebody came home, they cooked for their child, and they dropped it off. Or like Patricia had said something about this, something happened with her traffic situation, right? Like what happened with her traffic situation. So I've been constantly, so one of the things that Dr. Joe says, right? When he says, with the tuning into new potentials, he says, what is when you tune into a new potential, like if you want to bring a lot of wealth to you, a lot of money to you, what is the sponsoring thought? The word he uses is sponsoring thought. The sponsoring thought is, I want freedom of schedule. I want to wake up whenever I want. I want to be like Dean Graziosi says, I want to come back home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I want to pick up my children. I want to have access to a jet so that whenever I want to go on vacation with my kids, I can put them on the jet. Like, I think he has a private jet. So he gets on the private jet and he goes away, right? If he wants to go up to the mountains, he flies to the mountains in Utah or wherever he wants to go, right? With his kids. He wants to go to California with his kids. He gets on the private jet and he goes. So that is the freedom the money gives him, right? So Dr. Joe says, what is the sponsoring thought? But even on the other side, it's not only on a sponsoring thought on the positive side, even on the negative side, we can see that there is a sponsoring thought. Like, why did I go cook for my child? I already had a long day at work. And this is a college going kid, which is above 18 years of age. They can cook for themselves and go buy fast food, right? Why did I take the time to go drop off the kid, the food? I wanted him to kind of feel love towards me, right? Because the kid is going to show appreciation for the food. Why did I want love from the child? Ask the question, why did I want love from my child? Because I feel this lacking in completeness, right? And that's why there's always a sponsoring thought for whatever action we are doing. And I want you to explain that, like, that the more people delve into the sponsoring thought, the more they will be able to unearth the subconscious mind, right? Whatever is going in the subconscious, it has a intention behind it, right? The subconscious mind over what we are doing. And we're thinking we are doing, we may think like it's such a halo, like Dr. Deepak Chopra says, what does he say? Moral self-righteousness is like jealousy with a halo. Right? The self-righteousness is, oh, I'm a mom, I love my child, oh, it's college going, he must not be eating, but like that's the goodness, right? We feel. So we kind of feel like, oh, I'm still taking care of my college going kid, right? But the actual, if you look at the underneath, and y'all are going to uncover it in your workshop, I think. Talk about the workshop too. I'm gonna go tag everyone. First, can you please talk about your workshop this weekend? And then we can go on this. You understood the question, right? About the sponsoring thought? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
So this weekend, I and Kelly and Kelly, we are holding a workshop that is surrounded around learning what your ego is and what your shadow is, and how. So your ego does an action, but your shadow, that's the stuff in the back. That's linked to this sponsoring thought that Poonam's talking about, that your shadow is why I do these actions. Why do I have these patterns? Why do I have these behaviors? Why do I do these things? And part of the ego too is being stuck in emotions. Do you have repetitive emotions? Do you have the same emotional state over and over? So the workshop, we're also going to deal with how to handle those emotions, how to notice them, how to handle them, coping skills for dealing with them, coping skills to get you past the ego, get you past your shadow, and then get you past these stuck emotions. So I'm super excited for the workshop. It's going to be really, really awesome. We're going to give you everyday life examples. We're going to show you where it is in the body. And then we're ending it with a meditation. And Kelly, she has just downloaded some new light codes that she's going to put in the meditation. So it's super, super exciting. Now, for the question, one of the areas that this kind of skims into is boundaries. So the overall theme here is that if you continue to just give and give and give, you will have nothing left. That you have to um, take care of yourself. You have needs as a human, as a person, and you have to make sure that your needs are being met and that you're not just giving all to everyone else. When we give everything to everybody else, we end up angry. We end up bitter. We end up resentful because we've given everything away. Not only that, but when we keep giving everything away, we are actually teaching these people to expect this from us, to behave this way. And then when we get sick of it, we lash out, we might yell, we might be angry, and we think we're mad at these other people. We're not mad at these other people. We're mad at ourselves for not being able to say no. We're mad at ourselves for not being able to say, I just don't have time right now. I'm sorry, I can't do that. But at the same time, so my suggestion is, it's not that you can't make food for your child who's in college. You can. But are you doing it with that thought behind that, um, if I don't do this, I'm a bad mom. If I don't do this, what will other people think? Or do you have your own inner guilt feeling about not doing it? That's an important aspect of this. And that is people pleasing. That's people pleasing behavior. If I don't make this child dinner after I've worked all day, then I feel bad because now I'm a bad mom. That feeling bad, that little space, that's the people pleasing space. So you have to ask yourself, you have to go in, you have to listen. Why am I doing this? Do I feel bad? Am I people pleasing? Do I want the approval? And behind the thought could be that this is how I get my importance. This is how I get my value, my worth. A lot of people pleasing behaviors is actually self-worth seeking behaviors. That is the thought behind the action. That's the shadow behind the ego. That's the shadow behind the action, right? So the initial action is I am this dedicated mom. I've worked all day. I got to make my child lunch. But it's really because you want to seem important and worthy. And some people, it's the martyr thing too. Oh, I've worked all day and then I do all these things, right? Now, my life is very much like that, but that's because I have 100 kids, but I do say no. I've learned to say no. So when it comes to actions like that, um, what I always suggest is you first check in with yourself and see if you even want to do it. Do you even want to do it? Is it going to take too much time, too much money, too much energy? Do you want to do it? And if the answer is no, then you simply can say, I'm sorry, I cannot do that right now. You don't have to give a reason. You don't have to explain. You can just simply say no, right? Now, if you do want to cook the dinner, then you cook the dinner out of a space of love, out of space of, it makes me happy to cook you dinner and to bring it to you. This brings me joy. I'm not looking for anything in return. I'm not even looking for a thank you. I am simply doing this out of a space of compassion and love. It's not taking anything from me. Actually, I enjoy it. That's the difference. The second space, there's no ego, there's no shadow, there's no sponsoring thought outside of love, giving and love. Okay. So I had to learn to check in with myself, and then I had to learn to say no. I had to learn that it was okay to say no as well. And that if I didn't say no, it wasn't, I was not, a bad person, because I definitely had people pleasing behaviors. Totally had those. I had the overachieving people pleasing behaviors. And if I couldn't do it all, then there must be something wrong with me. And it takes self-compassion. It takes knowing that you're good enough. It takes that inner conversation though. Do I even want to do this? Or am I people pleasing? Am I trying to be good enough? Am I trying to be worthy? Am I trying to be valued? That kind of thing. Does that make sense, Poonam? What was the other point you wanted me to answer? I forget.
Perfect sense. That's what, like, can you go in depth and do you have any examples of that you can think of either one of your clients doing an action and they have you can already detect by the time they tell you the story of what happened, what is the sponsoring thought behind, what is the motivation behind it, right? Because the ego is always motivated by some way of feeling better about itself, right? Through comparison. It always lives through comparison.
So there's so many examples. My mind's trying to just find one. And usually it is through the conversation with clients. Like you'll walk through the conversation and I'm trying to think because there's so many examples. Like I had a client recently who was having an issue at work. They were having an issue at work. It was related to the boss, and the boss wanted them to do a task. The client didn't necessarily agree with the task, so they got grumpy and they were kind of short. And as they're explaining it to me, I'm saying things like, well, why? Because why? Because you're thinking, and what happened is the task that the boss wanted them to do, they couldn't actually do it. So because they couldn't actually do it, the sponsoring thought was, I'm not good enough, which brought out the aggression defense mechanism, right? The ego. But the sponsoring thought or the shadow behind there was, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I can't do it. So that's one example, but there's numerous examples of the sponsoring thought. Usually behind, like you said, with money, you want freedom, you want choice. That's why you want money, right? We say, I want to win the lotto, I want this, I want that. But what we really want is the freedom, that feeling of peace, of freedom, of safety, of security. That's what we really want. In relationships, when we cling on to relationships that we don't or shouldn't hang on to them, right? It's the safety behind that. It's the security behind. Sometimes it's the I'm not good enough behind that. So you do always want to look at what Flynn was calling the sponsoring thought behind the action. You do want to do that. But I think it's more, that's important, but it's also important to start to learn to validate yourself and to know that your needs are important. And here's the thing about people that use people. So I have a lot of people, they're like, oh, so-and-so needed a ride. And, I just felt bad because they needed milk. But yet this person needs milk every single day. They never give gas money. They don't say thank you. And then when it comes time for them, they're not available to give rides. Here's the thing though. They're doing that because you're allowing it.
Mm.
Because you are not saying no, you're not setting the boundary. And before you came along, somebody gave them a ride every day. And after you, somebody will give them a ride every day because they're going to find somebody else to take advantage of. Some people, they are just takers in this world. And some people, they just give and give and give. But everything in life is about balance and harmony. It's always about, you don't want to always say no, and you don't want to always say yes. True balance and harmony is what life is really about, equaling out both sides.
Beautiful. You want to explain, Kelly, the question? And I'll go check the online if somebody said something. Thank you.
So she asked first to give a brief description of the workshop this weekend, which we're super excited about. And then she mentioned a story where a lady had, she said this was happening frequently, where a lady was stating like, I've worked all day and then I have to come home and cook my son dinner and I have to take it to him. And the son is out in college. But she feels like, so she was saying behind that action is the thought of, I need to be loved, I need to be important, I need to be needed. So she's asking for like what you think about that, and then some examples. And then I brought up like boundaries, checking in with yourself, things like that.
Thank you so much, April. Always incredibly amazing. Your input, your wisdom, so grateful. Before you speak, Kelly, I wanted to ask April, Summer said, or do I cook for my older kids because that's what my mom did? That would not be the case. Even if your mom did, you would break out of the pattern, right, April? Summer is thinking it's about her, but it's not about her. But she's
Or
saying,
do I cook for my older kids because that's what my mom did? You do cook for your older kids because that's what your mom did. That is a pattern. That is a learned behavior.
the approval pattern, seeking approval pattern, right?
Yeah.
Like you were
Well,
talking
and
about
it's also societal roles. So it's culture roles, it's societal roles, it's what we should do, should be. So she is cooking for her kids because that's what her mom did. And that's a pattern, that's a habit, that's a learned behavior that says we should cook for our kids, right?
Right.
Now, if you can do that again, if you can do that and you're okay with that, and you can do that from a space of love, like I cook Thanksgiving dinner. My kids expect me to cook Thanksgiving dinner, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with sharing my love in that way. I don't feel used. I don't feel taken advantage of, right? I don't feel stressed or tired. It's not taking my time, my energy, my money. I don't have any negative feelings about it.
You feel the joy. joy
Right.
of hosting a Thanksgiving meal.
And I'm not doing it because, oh, my mom did it, I have to. Because technically, if I really didn't, I could tell my girls, I don't want to do it. And they would all bring a dish and we'd have it somewhere else. Right. So that what Samar is bringing up is a pattern. That's a cultural and societal pattern. So
Perfect. And it would still be her mother was seeking approval when her mother was cooking for her grown kids. And now Summer is doing the same. The reason why she's cooking for her grown kids is because she's
yeah, I
seeking
mean,
approval.
it is kind of approval when you look at the culture. Like this is what women are supposed to do.
Mhm.
And especially in Samar's culture,
Right.
this is what women do, and we just are forever servants to our children and our family.
Mhm.
Um, but again, you have to do it from that space of love.
Mhm.
And besides, when you're cooking, like tonight, I finally got to eat because I hadn't been feeling well, and I just took a moment, and I joke with you guys. Remember, I joke like SpongeBob. Plankton wants SpongeBob's recipe. Have you ever watched SpongeBob? Well, it's a continuous fight, and then one day Plankton screams, he wants a secret recipe, and he's like, "It's love. It's just love." So I took a moment and made sure to put some good energy in the food I was eating. And, if you can cook for your children and you can put that love into your food, and that's the space you're coming in, then that's okay. But if you're doing it because you feel you have to, or if you have any of those shadows behind you, then you definitely want to look
Hopefully, Summer and Patricia join your workshop this weekend.
at that. That would be awesome.
Excuse me. I would have joined, but I'm at Dr. Joe's advanced follow-up retreat here in Dallas. It starts tomorrow. So I'm
Oh,
gonna leave
nice.
to go to the hotel
It's still on my bucket list one day. I'm going to go to that.
advanced
On my
retreat.
bucket list.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's beautiful,
Yep.
beautiful. So we'll have our 13 hours of meditation or 14 hours of meditation. So
Wow.
um one of the things that I actually made it a tip of the day. RJ Spina actually said, write down, like when you do an action like this, dropping off for the kid, right? Dropping off food for a child that's in college after you worked all day, right? So RJ Spina says that write down that action and then question it. The same kind of questioning that I did, right? Why did you want to drop off after you worked all day? Like, it's not even that you were on the weekend, you worked all day, you came back in the evening, and then you cooked. And then you went and dropped it off, not even asked him to come get the food. You went and dropped it off. So I would write that down, and then why did I drop it off? Oh, I wanted him to love me. Why did I want him to love me? I wanted him to love me because I was feeling this lack. So I hope you understood, Kelly, what the sponsoring thought behind that whole action was the lack. Right? I'm feeling a sense of lack and incompleteness, so I am cooking this food for my child so that they can love me, right? If you want to speak
Can
to
I
that.
can I just, before Kelly starts, because I know that April has to leave soon,
Sure.
just have one quick question to that. Do we look for sponsoring thoughts all the time for every action we do?
You should.
Or
You should.
negative, just because, I mean, that's gonna drive me nuts if I have to, like, everything I do, I'm not gonna have to, I don't know. It's just hard.
It's
I know
really more, Patricia, it's really more the things that are causing you. So at this point, well, I guess I should ask you. At this point, you should be in touch with your body through meditation. You should be in touch with your body. Okay. So your body should be sending you signals when you are off base, when you are off center, when you're not feeling good, when something doesn't feel right. Okay. So you can try to use just those situations right now. So you don't get overwhelmed trying to look at every action that you're doing. But I do know, like, you do, at least you did in the past, you had some people pleasing behaviors, such as bringing things to work or food to work because you want them
Still
to
do
like
it.
you.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you can do that without wanting them to like you don't do it with wanting, I don't do things with anything in return. Whatever I do, I am giving you me, and I don't expect nothing in return. I don't want nothing in return. I don't care if I get a thank you. I don't, it's not that it's not appreciated, but I'm just saying I don't do it from that space.
Mm.
I do it from the gift of me, my heart. That's it. You like it, you don't like it. Okay.
So
Right?
with that, that's an excellent example. So with that example, if I used to do it in the past exactly for approval, but now
Right.
I find it that I actually have joy in doing it, and then they
That's fine.
just move on. So
As
it
long as you
actually,
don't expect anything in return.
right, so it came, so that was, I guess, my true nature. I just have that in me. But before, I used that to get people's approval. Right now, I just use it because it brings me joy. So
That's fine.
that's the
Yep.
difference. Okay.
That's the difference. And as long as you're not expecting someone else to bring fruit one day, someone to say thank you, to have, as long as you can do it from your heart space, you're giving love. That's what we're supposed to do here. You're giving love. That's okay. So it, the ones I would pay attention to is when your body is feeling off, your energy is feeling off, and maybe when you're getting upset with yourself, like the driving example, part of the driving example that you gave, behind that was the perfectionism. That's why you got upset, because you couldn't take the same route,
Mm.
because you know your perfect route, you know your perfect time, and that was throwing it all off. That's when you check in and go, why am I upset? Why am I upset? I know that this is what happens in life, right? So yes, I give freely all the time. I have no resentments. It, I'm not overdoing it.
And
I still
what
make
happened
a return.
after? What happened after? Like if you check with your thoughts and you find out that this is your sponsoring thoughts is because you're looking for approval, or you're afraid or something that you're not good enough and you like to be in control, but that doesn't, what then? Once you see it,
Right.
you stop doing it?
Yeah. That's what we're going to talk about this weekend. That's what,
Oh,
yeah.
by the way, I didn't even have anywhere linked. I mean, I saw the stuff about the workshop and I wanted, but there was nowhere for me to
Are you
click
in
in.
my, you're in my group, aren't you?
My
Aren't you
not.
in my group?
I'll see if I can share it with you,
I
Patricia.
can give
Or
you an
can you
invite
send
to
it?
my group, but yes, you will want to gain those insights, and then you'll see, this is what we're going to go through. You need to go into those spaces where that sponsoring thought is, where that shadow is. We need to heal that space, and then you change the behaviors.
Yeah, so please, Kelly and April, if you can send me either through Messenger or something.
Yeah, I'll
The
send you an invite to my group, Patricia. But for now, just start noticing it. And then, like Poonam is saying, it's a very good idea to journal it, or to have a conversation with yourself about, why am I doing this behavior? First, because self-awareness is the key. You have to have self-awareness to learn and grow. That's the key. That's the first key. So if you don't know, then how are you supposed to fix it?
Right. I'm just afraid sometimes that if I actually have that awareness, I'm gonna start beating myself up that
And we're not
why?
beating ourselves up. It's information. It's just data. Oh, this is why I do this. Oh, okay. Well, that kind of needs to stop. So,
I love you, April. Exactly. Just so simple. It's like, yeah. I
You know what?
don't.
I used to be super hard on myself, like super unbelievably hard on myself. And then it's just really silly because you have to realize you're here on a journey. This is not here to be perfect. You're here to on a journey to learn. So yeah, and it doesn't mean that I like everything I've ever done in my life and that I haven't had a shadow and an ego. I have. But you just have to learn to unconditionally love it while you work on it. But
Thank you.
I do gotta scoot. I gotta go get a child who's running around. We got a car show in our town today.
Sure.
So
Thank you so much, April. So grateful
Thank
for all the guidance. Have a wonderful evening and have a great workshop. Kelly and Kelly, if y'all understood the question, if y'all want to speak to it, thank you.
Well, I think I understand the question from the conversation. It they were talking about what's called sponsoring thoughts. So like thoughts behind your actions.
Oh, the origin of the
The origin
motivation
of
and
the
the structure
motivation.
of the
Yeah.
impulse. Yep. Kate.
Do you want to go first?
Uh,
Because it depends. I mean, April said a lot of stuff that I probably already would have said. I can't speak to being a mom though, like because there are certain things like when you start to become aware of yourself and aware of the patterns, like there's a couple of examples I had. Like when I grew up, my dad asked my sisters and I if we did not want to make our lunches, if we didn't care what he put in our lunch, he would make our lunch. My sisters were very particular about what they wanted to eat. I was not, because I was a busy athlete and I had school and I just didn't care. I was like, put food in my lunch and I'll take it to school. So that was the agreement that I had with my dad, because that was a conversation that we had, and he didn't mind that he made my lunch and my sisters made their lunch. There wasn't any animosity. He didn't, he never grumbled about it. He didn't care. When I had kids and my kids wanted to make their lunches, I had 4 and I was very busy with them all the time. So I didn't want to make lunches for any of them because they were all very particular about what they wanted to eat. And that was a nightmare trying to figure out how to, please everyone. And I didn't want to do that. So what I did with my kids from a very young age was it was a conversation. It was, you have to have these particular items in your lunch, and then you get one small treat, and they could pick so that every day at, a certain time at night, because we do it before bed, they would go and make their lunch and they put in it, and then they show me what they have and they put it in the fridge. So as a mom in particular, because I know part of this conversation centered around that, is that there's always things with my kids that I've just had it as a conversation so that I'm not resentful that I'm doing something for them. They're not resentful that they have to do it. It's always communication, because it always boils down to, if you start feeling resentful about something that you're doing or angry or that lack feeling that Poonam was talking about, that's a conversation you need to have with yourself. Is why do I feel that way? Do I feel that way because I'm doing something all the time that I don't want to be doing, but I'm not telling anyone about it? Because that's my fault. If I'm continually doing something that I don't want to do, who else is going to stop me from doing it? I have to stop myself from doing it. So for me as a parent in particular, there's been a lot of times where I recognize that a pattern, or it's not even a pattern, because we get into different phases of life. So different stages and phases of life that I've had with my kids, I recognize when we get to a different phase and it has to change. And because maybe I'm going back to work more and they need to do more housework, or they need to do more of this, or 3 of our adult children still live with us. They all have different lives. So everything becomes a conversation: house cleaning, cooking. Like I can say for myself, I do the majority of the cooking because I am the person that works at home the most. And I kind of keep that running. But do I do it all the time? No, because there are times that I can't. And I don't resent it because I actually love cooking. It helps me process when I'm shifting energy. So it keeps me busy without being in my head. I love doing it. So, but those days that I can't or that I don't want to, everything becomes a conversation. Like last night in particular, I was like, I'm not cooking today. There's leftovers. You're all grown up. You can make whatever you want. And people fend for themselves. So for me, everything becomes a conversation. And it always starts with the conversation that you have with yourself. And asking yourself those questions like why. And I know, Patricia, you asked April about, oh my gosh, I'm going to drive myself crazy asking those questions. But it becomes more of a habit. Like it's just you don't have to drive yourself crazy with it. It's just something that if you notice, like, I wonder why I do that all the time, even if it's something that you like to do. But there are certain things where I'm like, oh, but this bothers me today. Why does it bother me today? I don't ever, sometimes if I don't have the answer right away, I just put the question out there in my heart and I leave it. And I'll usually get the answer at some point during the day. It'll just hit me. Oh, wow. I do this because in my life, I have been trying to do X, Y, Z, or I've been trying to achieve this. And this is how it makes me feel. Oh, okay. Wow. And it just kind of becomes something that's part of yourself and part of what you do, and not necessarily driving yourself crazy, because you can drive yourself crazy being in your head.
What
That's
if you don't like the answer?
well, I don't
No,
sometimes.
what part of you doesn't like
But
the
what
answer?
part of you doesn't like the answer? It's always your ego that doesn't like the answer.
Yeah.
But that's a good question, because that does happen where
You're
you
like,
know,
ah, man,
yeah.
what? Come on."
Because it also means that now when I know and I don't like the answer, I have to do something about it. And maybe I don't want to because I'm afraid that if I actually do something, what will they do? What will that mean, to my image, to my self-image, to how will other people accept me actually starting to say no? Or, I just, if I'm not skilled enough to communicate it in a way that I'm not going to create a conflict around me that I really don't want, I
know
don't
what?
want.
Doesn't matter.
Hmm.
How much you want your freedom, how much you want to divest yourself of the, negative internal dialogue. If
But
you
I
don't,
don't know. I don't know what freedom is. I don't think I've been living in such conditions all my life that I just don't know what it is to be free.
but how much do you want to know? How much do you resist knowing? Have you ever asked yourself how much you resist knowing?
That's the element of trust that I'm working on.
No, but I guarantee you, Patricia, you already know how much you resist knowing. It's one of those feelings where you don't want to look at it, because if you look at it, it will start to unravel the way that you hide from yourself. And that is where the sponsoring or the originating thought form impulses come from. When we hide, this is where shadow hides in our awareness, is those places we do not want to look because it's uncomfortable, because, oh dear, what if I change and then people don't like me? You know what?
but here's a better question to ask yourself is, are you okay with yourself changing? Because it's really not about other people liking you for changing. It's, are you going to like yourself better because you changed? And the answer would probably be yes, because you are going to feel better. You're going to feel more free. And it is hard. Like, I know what that's like to have to look at those things. And like, what did you call me on the podcast? I'm stubborn in the most lovely way is what you call me, because I don't run from my ego. I knew, especially when I met him and we became friends, that I was going to have to suck it up. And not because he's mean about it or he points but he's very direct in communicating, and I'm very direct too. And I thought, well, if I want to be direct that way, I have to accept that someone else is direct and my ego is going to be challenged by that. And I was like, well, if I can't, because it's not about running away from him or what he says, it's about I'm running away from myself if I don't want to look at something, if my ego is triggered. So I always want to know, for me, if something bothers me, I always want to know why.
Yep.
I can't help it.
Yep.
It's like, I'm like, well, okay, I'm triggered. Why? Why am I triggered? Why, why do I feel irritated? Why do I feel
of the
annoyed?
whys,
All the whys.
all the whys.
And it's a
Mhm.
hard, it's a hard process, but like I said, it becomes a part of your everyday where, when you start unraveling the big story, sometimes it can feel very sort of almost devastating.
Yep.
Because it's an ego death.
Yep.
And it's a dark night of the soul. There's lots of different names for it. It can feel awful, but that becomes less and less and less because you know that you love yourself so much more. And it does take a while not to care what other people think.
It does take practice.
That takes a lot of practice.
But not caring what other people think is an important thing to understand, because if you want to heal and you want to end negative internal dialogue and stop the hamster wheel, stop the monkey mind coming at you. I mean, I have very few friends. I'm very, very lucky that I have Kelly and her kids in my life. And my circle of friends is really, really small. And you know what? It's awesome. Because the friends that I do have in my life, they admire me for that discipline, for my self-awareness. Because we have had conversations, because they see me change and they go, oh, what's going on? And, and they see me happier and they see me more, alive and more myself, happier. So, and they want to understand, because, everybody wants to be happy and they want to understand, like, what's the change, like what's going on. And then we have these great conversations and it's very eye-opening for everyone involved. But again, if people don't want you to change, if people dislike you changing or healing, then they are people who do not support you at all, which is also okay, because not everyone's path is one of actual awareness and healing. And that's just the way that it is. And that's one of the things that I just accepted about people when I began to understand that not everyone wanted to know. Not everyone wants to know. Like I have a brother who
Oh, yeah.
is completely different. I've had conversations with him where he has distinctly and unequivocally said that he doesn't want to know, because that would mean he would need to be more responsible. And the first time he said this to me, I just sort of went, oh, yeah, okay, all right. And he had something to go and do, so he went and did it. And I was just like standing there going, what did I just, what just happened? How is this person my brother? How can why does he not want to know? Why is he not even the slight bit curious? But my brother has a very rigid mind, very fragile ego, very fragile mind. And I get it now. And, I'm just different. And this is why you're here, is because you are different too. You want something different. You want to understand how to heal and how to stop the thoughts in your head that are not constructive and supportive of you growing and healing and being who you are. That's what everybody wants, really. Even people who don't want to know, that is what they want to know. Everybody wants to know that. Some people are just here to be unconscious and to experience things, and it's not their time. And I've experienced that, whereas literally in this embodiment, it is not that person's time. And that was a huge learning experience for me, because I was always curious. I always wanted to know. I didn't get it, that there were people who literally could not entertain the thought that there was something else other than their misery. But that there's something more.
Yeah.
And you want that. You want to experience that something more, which is your own personal freedom from your patterns, from your karma, from your ego, from your shadow, all those things. It's a progression. And it takes practice. And that is the one big secret that really isn't a secret. It's like riding a bike. But you got to get on the bike first and figure it out, which takes practice, which goes back to the thoughts and the thought forming impulses, right? So we have all of these experiences that are unconscious when we're kids, and we have all of these stories inside of us. And then, at some point in time, those of us who want to be aware realize, oh, there was this story I was telling myself, and I stopped telling it to myself about this person, and now we're getting along a lot better. That's interesting. Which is actually something that's happened with my mom in the last about 6 months, 4 to 6 months. My relationship with my mom is completely different because I clued into a few things and healed a couple things, and went inside and tore up my contract with her and said, no, I want something new now. And that is something that we can all do. This is where active participation in mastering our thoughts and our choices, seeing our thoughts, feeling our thoughts, and actively participating in how we are interacting with people. We can actually go, no, universe, my heart, I want something different. Let's end this because I want something different. I want something that is going to support me. I want something that is going to support my heart, my life, and the best possible outcome for everyone involved. And this is where we need to understand that we have the power when we are present with ourselves to accept that we can change. And that change is what being human is actually really about. Because being human, whether or not you are conscious or not, or aware or mindful or whatever you want to call it, being human is about changing literally the fabric of reality by growing and becoming more human and becoming more present.
And the part, just to add one quick thing, is the part that will drive you crazy in your head isn't the questions. It's when you stay in your head and you go, there's this question. Why do I have this question? Oh my gosh, I don't want to feel like when you get on the wheel in your head. And so that's the distinction I wanted to make about ask yourself the question like, oh, why am I triggered? And just ask that.
Yep.
Don't think about it.
Yep.
Just feel it
Yep.
here.
Why?
And ask why. And then don't think about it. Keep going about your day. And then the answer will come to you when you're not thinking about it. Because it's the
Yep.
thinking, that's the ego thinking that it can think itself out of, what's bothering it, which it's not the way it works.
And how do you know that what the answer that comes is not from the ego trying to, just now bullshit you yourself? It's just, okay, you had this question, but I give you a great story to answer, so you kind of stay with it. Or when is actual the truth that God or universe is actually feeding you in that moment of presence for you to grow versus staying within the conditioning?
Well, for me personally, it's a feeling. Because like I said, when I move it out of my head and I just put the question in my heart and I go about my day and I'm not worried about it, I'm not thinking about it, I'm not dwelling on it, the answer just comes when I'm not expecting it. And that's how I know it's truth, because I'll feel it here in my chest as a feeling. And that'll make me stop and go, oh, it's like the aha where you go, oh, yeah. Because your ego can try to think of an answer, and you can come up with all kinds of stuff, which may or may not be true. But that's the difference between being in your head about it and then being in your heart.
Yep.
And that just takes practice, because for me, I used to dwell on stuff like, oh, I have to figure this out. And oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah. And you get all the thoughts in your head. Well, you can't find anything in there because it's just a blah. It's just a stuff.
Yep.
So that's for me, it's actually a physical feeling.
Yeah, this is why having some sort of physical practice is really important, because it'll give you a neutral baseline foundation understanding of pulling yourself out of your head and feeling your body, feeling your physical present moment. So we have, we talk a lot about, being in the moment, but the physical present moment is really key to deciphering the language of feeling that we have with ourselves. And for me, there's a few distinct feelings that I have One is that feeling of uncomfortableness is like, oh, I don't want to look there because like that's like it's too much, like pretend it's not there. And that is usually an indication. It's like I need to like turn my head and look, because that means my shadow, my ego is trying to hide really important information from me. And usually when I actually arrive at an understanding, I will cry. I will feel relief. I will feel grief.
Yeah, me too.
I will feel understanding and clarity. And oftentimes it'll make me cry because I'm like, oh, like the relief of feeling that space of having some clarity, especially if it's been a long standing issue or something that I've been trying to figure out. Yeah, tears are a great indication, are a great point of reference and something to pay attention to. When we want to cry and we have all this emotional energy come to the surface, those are important moments because they will tell us, because your body will tell you. The tears are not a mental thing but they are emotional energy, but it's your body that is communicating with you that you've actually hit on something.
And does it stay for multiple times, or once you see it, it's gone forever because you are aware of it now? So even if it tries to come back, you kind of see it right away.
Yes, once you actually see something, it is a lot easier after the initial moment of contact with that information and clarity. It does become a lot easier and it becomes a lot more normal. And this is why the discipline of practicing, mindfulness or being present is so important, because it will, once you get used to that new moment, being in similar moments become a lot easier, because that is you getting on the bike and riding down the block or riding around the block and coming back home, because you have to let it move, right? Our mind or ego can lock down and keep us from feeling the energy that needs to move. So we will need to pay attention. But the thing that the ego and the shadow will always do is like, oh, we can't deal with this. This is too much. But the reality is like you're already feeling it. And if you're feeling it, then it's not too much. And your heart has already prepared you to feel it, to process, and to heal it. And
Incredible.
then once you have that and have practiced it enough, it becomes like normal. Like for me, if something comes up, I can be in the middle of a conversation, and even though I feel like I want to cry, I can let it move through me. And it's just normal, and nothing is shown on the surface. But in my heart, I have this whole, mountain ranges collapsing and, ocean rushing in and this huge, calamity going on, but I'm fine. Because I know I'm safe, because I know I'm strong enough to deal with and to process what I'm dealing with, because it's come to the surface. It would not come to the surface if I wasn't ready.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kelly and Kelly. We actually, you won't believe it, right before this Facebook Live started, Sri Lakshmi, Patricia, and I had this conversation about the thing that stops the momentum of thoughts is being anchored in your body. The point that you made. Patricia, why don't you try like a Qigong class with Kelly? Do you have like time? Do y'all do something on Saturdays or Sundays? Because she's at work during the weekdays, so weekday would be impossible. Do y'all do classes on Saturday and Sunday, Kelly?
We don't right now, but we were gonna have an online class again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
leave alone online, you can actually buy the course. You have a
We have an
recorded
app.
Yeah,
course.
we have
We
an app. You can buy it. Yeah.
Some basic courses.
Yeah, the app is the course on the app, well, I feel it's really good. It's very detailed. You get a lot more detail than you do. I mean, the detail in that you'd have to get over time, like
Yeah,
time.
detail in the course
Yeah.
is basically about the equivalent
really
of
good.
about 10 classes.
Okay.
Or more, but yeah.
Or more. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can always go back.
I'm
to it.
I'm just being, conservative.
And then you can repeatedly see it, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's
and
not
then you-
10, it's like 100 or 200 classes because you're repeatedly watching
Yep.
it over
Yeah,
and over
because
again.
we
So
do
it's worth
it,
that.
we do everything, we break everything down, and then there are a couple of like options that you can just follow along once you learn everything. So
But beautifully said. So what had happened was, Patricia, you had that issue at work, and I had said she had an issue with somebody that was working for her, and I said, and she knew she had self-realization that her ego came in the way, right, in the tone that she spoke to this person. And I said, now look back and see what is the sponsoring thought behind the tone, because it had nothing to do with that person's performance. The sponsoring thought was that she was frustrated about the situation that she has to keep answering the phone. And she wants to be doing like something that is more like a marketing manager kind of operations manager kind of role. She doesn't want to be answering phones, right? So the frustration about answering phones showed up in the tone of voice. So that was the whole conversation, how it started. Like I've been telling other people, right? Like the same thing with the cooking the food. It's like there's a sponsoring thought. Why are you cooking the food? Like the shadow is working, right? And y'all are going to talk about it in detail during your workshop. Anything else, Patricia, you want to add? You want to ask Kelly and Kelly? I'll actually read what real quick. Summer said, unfortunately, this is my birthday weekend and we are visiting the kids, meeting in-laws to be for my son and going to Oktoberfest. It's jam-packed. I will not be able to attend the fabulous workshop, so sorry. Okay. Happy birthday, Summer, already for this weekend. And then Cheryl said, so well said, Kelly and Kelly. Patricia, when you hear yourself say, do I have to question everything? It will do my head in. Firstly, who's the I saying this? You already know this, right? Who's the I who's saying it? On whose behalf are you having that thought? So anything else, Patricia, you want to ask Kelly and Kelly? They've come in after a month or two, right? So after a long time. It's free for all and there's nobody else. So you have the floor, right? There's Kelly and there's you. You can have another 5-10 minutes of questioning them. Thank you.
You have a way to put me on the spot, Poonam. Now, I always have a million questions, and now when I can, and tell me, it's like, whoa, what do I do? I think that element of, I was listening to Carolyn Mays and with her medical intuition course, and she was talking about the seventh chakra and the, faith. And she said that we don't realize that, according to her, life without faith is it's horrible, basically, because she said that we have that energy. So if we don't have faith into something, then that energy has to go somewhere, and we're gonna have the faith in the opposite. So like something negative, let's say if we don't have faith, let's say that God has my back and there's grace and I'm always taken care of, then what's the opposite? Right? So it's a horrible place to be, and that gave me a lot of thinking, because all the limiting beliefs I had all my life was the defense mechanism, the monkey mind's flight and flight. So all my energy was always going there, that everything bad's gonna happen and stuff like this. So that's where the panic was coming in, anxiety, because I didn't know that I can actually choose to have a faith in something like the universe, that it's everything happens for a reason, and that if I have to, like you said today, if I have to see something and some information is coming up, I have to have faith that if I'm seeing it, I will also have the tools or the ability to do something
Endure it.
about it.
Endure it. So let me ask you a question, Patricia. What is your sponsoring thought behind calling your mother every day? Why do you
About-
call your Why do you call your mother every day? Do you have to call your mother every day?
I'm afraid that she's not gonna be there one day.
And what will happen if she's not there one day?
That I'm gonna feel like I missed the opportunity to spend time with her and see her, and I don't know that I didn't say something or that I didn't.
So the sponsoring thought is your guilt about spending time with your mother. The guilt,
Maybe.
the shadow is the guilt.
Mm,
Mm.
Make sense?
There's,
That you're guilty that you have not taken the time to go to Poland and go visit your mother. There's the guilt.
Right,
And that
because
makes
she
you,
wants me to come, and I don't want to go. So at least I'm kind of making it up by
so
seeing her.
so you realize, right? Guilt, shame, blame are ego's favorite strategies to strengthen itself. Anytime you have a thought that it has guilt behind it, that is the ego. So you're feeding the ego. Where we are trying not to, we are trying, just like Anthony William talks about starving the viruses, right? Why are we drinking celery juice, not doing wheat, gluten, dairy, starving the virus, right? Heavy metal detox smoothie. So it's starving the ego. It's all about starving the ego. Eckhart teaches only that, starve the ego. And all these thoughts that are guilt sponsored by guilt, shame, blame, we have to drop it.
So if I have, let's say, one time that I actually want to call her and I'm like happy to call her, that's okay. But on those days when I kind of feel, oh, I didn't call my mom, then would be out of that. So the same situation can be either or it's always the same.
No, as long as you, like, just like April said, right? If you're doing it out of love, right? Like if I want to, my son is 25, if I want to cook something for him, and if I do it out of love, then it is out of love. I'm not doing it because I want some love from him, right? He can cook his own food. He's old enough. He's been cooking since he's 18. I don't ever cook his food. I lost this thing. Once he turned 18, I gave him a car keys. You can go buy your food or you can cook yourself.
What about commitment? Is the commitment like if we commit to do something and then one day you just can't do it?
Commit to like what?
Let's say it is an example of calling my mom. If I, say I'm gonna call you every day around lunch because then when I can, and then one day I won't. So
Why
is
would
the
you make that
commitment-
commitment?
is the
Why would you
commitment-
make the commitment? Why would you make the commitment?
Okay.
And that's what I'm trying to, you have to be very loosey-goosey with every action, like the impermanence of form should be like interwoven in every action that you take, right? Just like Byron Katie says, I'll meet you for lunch on so-and-so day, if the present moment allows me to.
Mm. So you
maybe
have
you should do an
intention. but-
experiment.
What were you saying, Kelly?
Maybe you should do an experiment, Patricia. Tell your mom that, okay, the next time you talk to her, like say tomorrow, that the next day you're actually going to be busy at lunch. You're sorry, but you won't be able to call her and see what happens.
No, I've done that and she's okay with it. Nothing happened.
Okay, all right. So then why is there this attachment to this, to the guilt?
I think there's also part of me that I noticed that I kind of like when she's talking, I'm waiting for her to tell me something about my dad. And then
Why is that
speaking of-
attachment? Okay, let's go into that attachment. Why are you attached to what your dad, that little girl, that 4-year-old girl that wants approval from her dad? This 40-year-old Patricia also is still that 4-year-old girl that wants approval from her dad. Why? What Eckhart says, why does it matter if our parents approve of us or not? Carolyn Mays has a meditation and evening meditations. He says, are you seeking approval from others? Do
Yep.
you have approval of yourself? Do you approve of yourself? First, approve of yourself. Love yourself, right? Approve
But still,
yourself.
there's another thing, because I do, there are moments when I do have that self-love and I approve of myself and I'm happy, and then somehow the ego comes like, well, but if they don't see it, that means that you're not doing it right.
Why do you have to have them see it?
Because
What is,
if-
what,
if
what is
you-
that seeking
Yeah.
of approval behind that somebody
Well,
has to see that we're happy?
like, I want to see in the
No, I
mirror.
mean, look
that-
at the convoluted thinking that you have. Look
Mm.
at the convoluted thinking, and it's just thoughts. It is just thoughts. These are just plain thoughts. Drop the thought, freedom. You are just thinking a thought and suffering it. Just thinking a thought and suffering it. And this is what Eckhart's teachings are about, Dr. Joe's teachings are about. Don't think that thought. Don't give it attention. Where attention goes, energy flows. Then you go, you spiral. Oh, now they don't love me. They're not seeing that I'm joyful by myself. Why does anybody have to really feel that I'm joyful? Sitting in a chair in my meditation room, I'm joyful. Why
Mm.
does somebody else have to see and approve? Oh, Poonam, you look so joyful. Does somebody have to do
Because
that?
I think I still, a part of me wants to improve my life, and that yeah, you're right. Just if I do it for myself, and that's not.
Yep.
Just like you eat medical medium food for your own joy, for your own body. The same thing with the spiritual practice. You do it for your own joy. I do my meditation because it gives me joy. And that joy flows in the work I do from morning till evening. Like I'm constantly in gratitude, in thankfulness, gratitude, thankfulness. One email, one phone call, this thing. That's all there is to life, that allow the joy to flow.
Yeah, I think
out.
I like myself better when I do that, especially when
That's
I'm
it.
very grateful more and more for everything. I think I just like being in that state.
So try and recover. I would much rather you do a 20-minute meditation than call your mother with such a stress. See, you look so tired, and today's Wednesday, right? And you have another 2 days in the work week to go. So if you're tired by Wednesday, then you have to audit, you have to have enough presence power to audit where your energy is leaking. Phone calls with your mother is an energy leak.
Hmm.
Especially because you have that hidden ego attachment to needing to know about your dad.
Beautiful.
Why?
And that's actually where, like, when that you should question the guilt.
Yep.
Like when you start to feel guilty, like what is it that you actually feel guilty about?
Yep.
Do you actually feel guilty about that? Well, if you don't talk to them, they might not be there the next day. Because I mean, I think we've all been there where we kind of think of that, but you can't live your life that way either, because life happens.
Yep.
You know, it's like like my mom isn't well, but I sometimes cannot talk to her every day because her illness makes it very hard for me to talk to her, but I try to do it as often as I can. But I also don't feel bad when I don't. So the other thing to question too is like, why do you feel guilty? Like, are there things like, do you feel guilty because you decided to move away from home and you're doing something completely different? Because maybe that's what you actually feel a little bit bad about. I'm not saying it is, but your ego is trying to tell you that it's because, well, they might not be there tomorrow. And that's how the story keeps going, because you tell yourself that. But sometimes underneath that, we actually feel guilty about something else, but our ego's like, but look over here, this is the shiny part. When actually it's like, well, you know, I feel bad. Like, I know when I moved out, it was because I could not stand being around my mom. And that took me a long time to realize that when I was running away from her, I was really running away from myself. So if I stop running away from myself and I'm left with all these feelings, well, what am I going to do with them? I have to heal them. right? But it's easy to make it about someone else,
Or something
right?
external.
Or something, yeah.
Outside of ourselves. And that's what our ego loves to do, is to make it about somebody else, when it really boils down to our own conversation with ourselves and our own relationship with ourselves.
So how do I heal the guilt about leaving Poland? Because I don't
There is
wanna
no
leave-
guilt.
Why do you feel guilty?
There is no guilt, it's a
Why?
story.
Why would you feel guilty? Why would you feel guilty for doing something that you felt was best for you?
Freedom, seeking freedom. Why would you feel guilty about being
Yeah.
free?
Yep.
Because part of me still wants to be part of the family I come from. It's my roots.
Oh,
you know,
sure.
so-
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's totally fair, yeah.
That's totally fair, but why do you feel guilty about? Why do you feel any guilt for that, for not being, because that's just life. You
And
you
you-
did something for yourself.
And you can also you're still part of the family.
Yeah.
You're just, you're being a part of the family in a way that works for you.
Yep.
And they don't have to understand.
No,
But my father doesn't talk to me and my brother doesn't talk to me. She's the only
But
one that
that's-
talks to me.
that's their problem. That's not your problem. You've
You
explained.
have to do
how they-
what, you have
how
to
they
do
have
what
an injury.
Kelly, you have to do what Kelly did, which is change the contract between you and your brother and
Yep.
you and your father, what he said
Yep.
about his mother, right?
Yep.
Or you can take a class with him and figure out, how do you
How
change?
do I change the contract though? Didn't we, the contract was done before that lifetime? How?
You can change your contract. This
Change
is
your
something-
energy.
This is something that people don't understand. They think that once they've signed, because we have all of these contracts in our 3D life, we project onto the actual spiritual level, that the spiritual reality is exactly limited this way that 3D reality is. And it's not. It's not. You have much more freedom on the spiritual planes of reality than you do in 3D reality, especially when it comes to relationships with other people.
So can I
That's
make,
amazing.
what you can do is, if you want to change the contract between you and your dad and you and your brother, have a meditation. And when you go inside, you just ask, you can either picture them there with you, and because I've done this with a lot of people, and you picture a contract.
Yep.
And you just watch it
Little-
go up in
little-
flames.
Imagine
And if-
yourself pulling it in two, tearing it
Yeah,
in
or
half.
tearing it in half, and then you just ask that whatever old contract you had with them is now finished. And we are now going to, if you want a new contract with them, you can ask for whatever, if there's still anything unfinished, but the contract is gonna be new and it's different, and it's one that serves everybody's highest good.
Yep.
And honestly, I've done it with myself, with people. We've
I've
done
done it
it.
with my parents.
It just,
and
it makes a
works.
huge
makes a huge
difference to
difference.
just do that for yourself.
Yep.
Because you'll feel so much freer, because you're making a choice that you want it to change, and it's changing the energy and between you and them. And then whatever happens, I mean, you might not see it right away if they're good, but
It
you
took
know.
a couple of weeks, like when I did it with my mom, it took a couple of weeks, and then things have been different ever since.
But do you have like, do you need to have details in your head how you want the new contract to be, or you just want to change it?
Just ask for all of the old ego attachments to be made null and void, so that you can build something out of love and kindness and true connection and authentic presence and mindfulness with your family.
And that's not affecting their free will. Like if my brother
No.
is stubborn enough not to speak with me, how will my contract will change that?
I don't
Yeah.
know. It's not mine.
I don't know.
It's yours.
your-
It'll be your experience.
Yeah, again,
Your
I
experience.
my
Like,
ego is like,
we
I
can-
want to know before I enter it, before
Yeah.
I do it, if it's
Well, and I don't know all the details of the contract that I had with, like, say, my parents, because that was something that we did a ritual, a couple of months ago. But it was just, I knew it was just time, because we had gotten all to the point where my family had given me as much as they were supposed to in this lifetime, what I needed from them. So then we could just move forward unencumbered, because we didn't have those old attachments, because there were just things in the contract that, that I needed for a certain amount of time and that they needed, but it's old
Yep.
energy. So it doesn't need to be there. I mean, Kelly and I can, we can talk with you after too and talk you through the process a little bit more. But it really does free you. It's about freeing you. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with infringing on their free will at
yeah,
all.
it doesn't infringe on their free will at
Because
all.
they also still have the choice in how that's going to manifest and how you co-create that together.
Because what you're doing is you're going inside and you are tearing up, you are removing that attachment on your end to the old way of doing things. And that's what it really means to tear up the soul contract with people in your life so that you can create a new connection based in heart and being present and being mindful.
Yeah, it's all in energy, you're right. Because I just had a silly question. Should I do it in English or Polish? But
I-
just
Doesn't, you could do it whatever
The
you like.
ego,
whatever.
the ego is still active, right?
it's try. Yeah, I
Right,
tried
it's
to
like-
just.
Do it in both.
Do it whatever you feel
Do
like.
whatever you feel like.
What I would say is
It doesn't matter because spirit will understand.
you could also do a changing boxes meditation, which is the same as what Kelly and Kelly are talking about. And you have that available all the time, right? So I think you can, are you all going to visit this during the Break Free workshop about changing contracts?
Yes,
If it
Kimi
comes
or
up, we
Yeah.
could, yeah.
Yeah.
Because she's gonna be there, right? Are you
Yeah.
gonna be there, Patricia?
Yeah, yes, yes.
Yeah, because it's just something we can definitely talk about. I mean, it's a level because we get into the the ego patterns and the shadow mechanics and stuff like that. But the next level is really about understanding the spiritual awareness and being able to step back into observation of yourself, observing your ego and your interactions in the 3D world and how you in the shadow interactions, and then stepping back another layer to observe the observer observing all of that. And then there's another layer of the observer observing the other observers observing yourself in the 3D reality with your ego and your shadow. So there are depths here
Mhm.
that are not written or spoken about, except in very obscure text these days. It's hard to find. But going inside, this is why being present with self is really important, and having that conversation with self is really, really important. Understanding that you have the choice, even though you have a soul connection with your family, you can still change the contract. You can change it. You can change a contract with yourself, where you have this unending, repeating pattern of a negative impulse surrounding, like a food item or a person or a particular color of shoes, for like just weird random thing, right? Seemingly. But there was an impact in a previous embodiment or when you were a child, where this story has gotten looped and looped and looped and looped so many times that it feels permanent. So this is why we go inside and why we need to be present with ourselves to understand, oh, this is a story that's on repeat. It doesn't serve me anymore. I can get rid of it. I can be done with it. I no longer need that attachment. And that's what going inside and symbolically tearing
Can
up.
it be done if you don't think you healed it? Because I know April says that the lesson keeps coming unless you learn it. But if I just think that I can't learn it or I don't want to learn it anymore, will that work still? Or the universe is like,
It will still
honey,
affect.
you can't change the contract because you still didn't get it.
Nothing changes, Patricia, until you change your energy. As Dr. Joe says, right? Change your energy, change your life. Change your energy, change your life. And what
it's
Kelly
really-
is talking about, getting into your body, is very, very necessary. Like you're telling, right? You cannot feel your energy. Like I can feel so much energy when I'm doing my meditation. It rushes through when you get still, right? I can feel it now. When I'm not speaking, I can feel my energy. Right? So until you feel that energy, all this will make sense. What anybody is saying over here, everything will about how do you change, how do you set that intention in your meditation, and then just experience like what Kelly and Kelly experienced, the tearing of the contract papers or the scroll, right? But if you don't know how to get still, then you won't be able to. The contract will remain, right? The old contract will remain. So
You can still go inside and you can do this exercise, and it can change things, even if you haven't finished learning the lesson or the point of context. It can change it, and sometimes what it will do, instead of quote unquote changing the pattern, it'll actually allow you to open up, because you're opening up to disconnecting the ego attachment and ending the ego attachment, because this is the real aim here, is the attachment, the limitation, the limited belief system around the story. You're working at opening yourself up to understanding how to feel beyond it, and to give yourself an understanding that you can create outside of these patterns and beyond these patterns.
Well, and that's what we're going to talk about on the weekend, is how that healing happens in layers. So when you heal part of a trauma or part of the, or a wound, it can seemingly resurface because there's a different wound underneath. It might try to come up, like I was saying, and it comes up and goes, I feel guilty if I don't talk to my mom because I might not talk to her tomorrow. But that's a repeating thing because there's something else behind it. So it's healing is layers. It's not necessarily that you sometimes, not saying all the time, but that you haven't learned a lesson. It's that you go deeper into the lesson.
Yep.
So there'll be, you heal one wound, and then with the same trauma, there's another kind of wound. And then, oh, there's another wound, same trauma, but there's multiple wounds to the same thing. So we're going to be talking about that too.
Yep.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Give you lots to think about now, or to feel, not to think about. We give you lots to feel.
Yeah, but I'm starting to feel a little there. I guess my ego is just like, are you sure you want to do it?
yes, you do.
That's usually a clear indication, when your ego, when you can feel that part of yourself resisting, not wanting to look in that direction of what you're resisting and why. It's a really good indication of that is the direction you need to go and look in.
Summer is asking, can you make a new contract with a dead family member?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Just imagine the same thing, same
But
meditation.
when someone passes, your connection to them does not end.
Okay.
I mean, I talk to my grandparents all the time if I need to.
Well, and a lot of times too, after someone passes on, they're different.
Yep.
Because they're not in 3D, so they have a different perspective. So sometimes the contract automatically changes.
Yep.
Just because they're on in a different
Plane.
dimension.
Yep.
But yeah, but you can do the same thing and go inside and ask.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This was mind blowing. Thank you so much, Kelly and Kelly. It was like the cayenne pepper on top of all the.
Cayenne pepper's good for you.
Moves that blood. Yes, sir.
Yes,
There we
and
go.
I put the link to the workshop, the event in our Facebook group as well as my.
Thank
Cool.
you.
personal.
Thank you
so
very
And then
much.
I sent it to Patricia as well, so you're welcome.
Awesome.
So
Sure,
Uh,
everybody's gonna join, guys. Yes.
try and tag Patricia if you want to tag Lakshmi and see if Lakshmi will join. Lakshmi, Michelle.
I think Lakshmi's registered, I think,
Yep.
already. Yeah.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, so you have some people already.
We do.
Awesome.
We
Yep.
do
Good
indeed.
luck. Good luck with the workshop, and I'll
Thank
be
you
at
So
my
much.
workshop.
Have a good one too, Poonam.
Thank you.
Yes,
Have a
have
fantastic week.
Amazing, yes,
Much
amazing
love.
week. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Grateful, eternally grateful. Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.